Assembly is our first-person VR adventure game with a focus on discovery, exploration, and also some good old-fashioned adventure game mechanics like puzzle solving, collectibles, and where there's a strong emphasis on player choice, where the actions that you take within the game will determine the outcome. The Assembly itself is a collective of scientists, academics, and engineers who are all about knowledge for the sake of knowledge, progress for the sake of progress, discovery for the sake of discovery. They're not interested in government oversight. They're even less interested in society's morals. So they built a big underground facility deep in the heart of the Nevada desert that they call the bunker, where they can conduct their scientific experiments away from the world's prying eyes. We have a dual protagonist setup. You will inhabit the skin of two very different people, Madeline and Cal. Madeline is the recent inductee, you might say abductee, by the Assembly. The demo that we're showing today kicks off with, and the game itself kicks off with Madeline's story, where you find that she's been inducted by the Assembly for what turns out to be the world's most arduous job interview process. Cal has been a member of the Assembly for some time, however he now has reservations about how his research is being used, so he's looking for a way out. However, even though it's very tough to join the Assembly, it's even tougher to leave. So through this dual perspective setup, we can show the Assembly how it wishes to be seen with Madeline and how it really is with Cal. So in terms of the game's narrative, we looked much more we live in a golden age of television at the moment, and there's a lot of really great stories being told in sequential fashion, with shows like True Detective and a number of other shows, and so we really wanted to kind of deliver a really compelling narrative that propels the player through the game, where the characters who you think they are at the beginning of the game aren't necessarily who they turn out to be by the end of the game. Equally, we're aware that we're not the first game to set the majority of our action in a secret underground bunker run by scientists. However, what we wanted to do is we wanted to deconstruct that fantasy, place it in a very much a real-world setting, see what makes it tick, how it would actually work. So, for example, these secret underground bases in the middle of the desert, what's their hiring processes like? How do people commute there every day to work, or do they stay there for months on end? And if they do stay there for months on end, what effect does that have on their psyche, their relationship with their colleagues, the relationship with their families? If they step out of line, what's the disciplinary procedures like? What's the hierarchy like? And this may sound a little bit dry and a bit HR-y, but then you have to remember it's still set in a secret underground facility run by scientists working all kind of weird and wonderful experiments.
Why is our subject missing a blindfold?
Don't ignore me.
Is she conscious? Administer a sedative immediately.
No.
I'm sorry, Dr. Stone. I'm sorry.
Be quiet. You, of all people, should know not to contaminate a sample.
So we've always wanted this to be a very compelling VR experience. We've noticed with VR that it acts as an enormous emotion amplifier. Video games over the last 10 to 15 years have really tried to implement an emotional engagement factor with varying different degrees of success. We've found with VR, it just turns on like a light switch. We don't have to program for it, we don't have to design for it. The level of presence and immersion you have it compels you to relate to characters in the environment just as you would do in the real world. This allows us to tell a story in a much more nuanced and subtle way, while still also being able to draw the player in. Additionally, we've got some very specific VR mechanics in there. So we use heights in the game, which obviously are massively amplified in VR because it really does. You can trigger vertigo. We use darkness as well, and we have things like night vision goggles. We also have an AR device. We have 3D scanning microscopes. We have camera as well, so that you use to. I don't want to spoil the story, but so there are elements of the game that we've put in that really draw upon the power of VR. And we've also noticed that in VR, polygon count counts for a lot less, or is much less important than really highly detailed textures, because obviously in VR you can lean in and really get up close to objects and really inspect them in close detail, and we found that it will convince you that you really are in another world, in another reality. It's fair to say it's been like hitting a moving target. So, we originally thought that VR was going to deliver an experience over there, but then it experiences over here, so we've dialed it back, but then the headsets become more evolved, and so it actually ends up being over there. But then again, there is nothing actually terrifically novel about this. Like, all of us at the studio have probably worked on games that have been for new consoles before, and when you're developing for a new platform, any new platform, there's a period of time where the hardware is in development as well as the software. And so it's kind of hitting a moving target is not something that's so unusual for the video games industry. However, are we looking forward to future projects when everything's all locked down and we really know what we're doing? Yeah, of course, but it's been very, very exciting. And to be fair, working in virtual reality is literally, in our opinion, literally the most exciting thing going on in video games at the moment. So it's just been a joyous experience. It's not felt arduous in the slightest. The Assembly will be released for PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift and HTC Vive early next year. We'll be ready when the VR headsets are ready. If you'd like to find out more about the game, you can find out more via nDreams.com, our website. You can also find us on Facebook via either nDreams VR or the Assembly VR. On Twitter, we are at nDreams VR, and please use the hashtag the Assembly VR.